All right. Happy Friday, everyone. It is the Friday before Halloween. And you know what? We debated putting on costumes for this episode, but we opted not to. It's just going to be the usual for me. But so I'm joined today by, I'm going to take a stab at this. You tell me how good I do. Avut de Cook. Is it somewhat close?
Wow, it's definitely a pass, that's for sure.
A pass. I got a pass. I'll take the pass. But he has said, you've said it's okay for me to call you Woody, correct? That's
That's so
okay, because
good.
that's going to be way easier for me to remember than to try and sit and take a stab. And you're gonna hear like 98 variations of your name if I try and say it the right way. So I'm gonna call you Woody for the sake of the show. And he is the founder and CEO of Feedback Fruits. And today's conversation, we're going to be talking about what's going on in the higher education space and how what he's doing is actually helping transform academia, which is a conversation that we will definitely fill the hour. I have no doubts there, but there are going to be some major ties to what we do in corporate learning and development. So if you're a corporate L&D person going, oh, well, higher ed, that's not really my thing, think again, you're going to enjoy it. But before we get into it, like we always do, let's get things fired up and talk a little bit about, we got some icebreaker stuff. So let's start with an easy one. Here's a slow pitch for you, Woody. So where are you in the world today?
So I'm currently based in Amsterdam, so that's
Okay.
why I should have been in Boston, by the way. But that's this tiny
That's
little
kind of
thing.
like not like, oops, I missed the train. You were supposed to be in Boston, but
Yeah,
instead you're in Amsterdam.
yeah, this tiny little thing came in between just before a week before I want to immigrate with my whole family to Boston. Jamaica Plains in Boston, beautiful place. I basically the borders were shut down, and since that day, actually, all meetings
Okay.
take online, so it doesn't basically matter anymore where I am. So, but
Okay.
actual place location is Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Yes.
Okay. So when things open back up, will you still consider, are you still going to Boston at some point, or is that just now in the new
Yeah.
post-COVID world, there's really no point, so I'm going to stay where I am?
Well, that's a good question. Um, well, first of all, Boston is a fantastic city. I love it as a European. It's beautiful.
Okay.
Uh, Especially also for higher education, of course. So it's a city that I will visit often. But a lot has changed since COVID. Like a company, I think we went 3 times in size, and now has a lot of different challenges, a lot of
Okay.
different stages. So whether it still makes sense for me to really immigrate there, I guess depends. So we'll see.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's still a TBD, but yes, I suppose, especially being in higher education, Boston would be a pretty good location to be if you were going to. So either way, you'll be back and forth. All right. Well, I am where I always am in Waukesha, Wisconsin, joined by my friendly house plant, Fred. And so let's shift gears to the other icebreaker question. I'm really curious with this one, Woody, is what's something you hope to accomplish by the end of the year? We're coming in, like I said, almost Halloween. October is almost behind us, which I can hardly believe. We got 2 months left. Anything you want to get done this year?
Yes, for sure. And that is, I guess, even sooner than you probably expect. But here in Amsterdam, it's like close to Friday night drink nights, and it's going to be a Halloween party. So
Okay.
one thing that I want to achieve is a fantastic Halloween party tonight. So I guess
Okay.
that
All right.
that's the answer.
Well, the good news is you'll know whether or not you achieve that goal in like an hour and a half. So it's not something, big aspirations. I like it. I like it. Well, you know what? There you go. Well, hopefully we'll keep you on target from a timing so that you can enjoy your Halloween party today. And so for me, I'll answer this one. In terms of mine, I'm actually planning on kicking off starting to write a book next week is kind of the thing. So
Okay.
if all goes well, I might get it done this year. That's a goal. I always say shoot high and then see what happens. So we'll see if I can pull that off in 2 months. I don't know. That's a big stretch goal. So we'll see where we go from there. All right. So let's
Nice.
shift gears over to the topic at hand, which is talking about what's going on in the higher education space, how technology is changing that, which I personally, just knowing what you do and getting to know that a little more, there are a lot of ties to what's going on in the relationship between academia and corporate are much closer than I think a lot of people think. But before we get into that, would love to hear from you the background story of who you are. How did you end up in this? Were you a academic and said, I got to change things? Were you a technologist? Like, how did you end up deciding you wanted to start this?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I was a student and I basically
Okay.
experienced a learning experience that I think could be tremendously improved. And I was asked, this was in the Netherlands, and I was asked to take part of an accreditation committee.
Okay.
I've seen all the studies here in the Netherlands, and I was like, the experience that I got is an experience that actually all these students get. And then I started to realize, okay, this really needs to change. And I was still a student back in the days at the TU Delft, which is the top engineering school here in the Netherlands. And at that time, we started with the idea of, okay, so how should we improve this learning experience, right? And I was at the coffee machine. This teacher comes, and these students were talking like, okay, wow, this could be improved. That could be improved, this course. And, wow, why did he do this? And then, oh, professor comes. Good morning, sir. Here's your coffee. And they,
So everybody has all these great ideas. You're in school, you're like, oh, we need to fix this. We need to fix, and then professor walks by and it's like, shh, don't say anything.
yes, exactly. And then they walks away and they continue, right? So I was like, what if this feedback would land in the email box of this professor half an hour after the class is over, then the next class could be improved. So that was the idea. Hence, that's where we got the name from also. That basically was a complete failure. So it didn't work. I mean, I guess that is a cultural barrier, just to be honest to your teacher. That was one thing. Well, okay, some students had the they dared to do it. But then you just could sense that the professors weren't used to getting that direct type of feedback.
No.
This is also a couple of years ago. So that didn't fly because they didn't reply on it. It basically sort of died out. However, the venture was started and the goal of really improving that learning experience, that definitely started. Then we iterated again. So I took another class where they organized a flipping the classroom model concept.
So
that
hang
class,
on before you.
okay, yeah.
So I got to ask this. Like in the beginning, it wasn't even you were thinking, hey, we need to develop something super specific. It was more like, hey, what if we just shared feedback with the professors and let them know, like, I think this would improve the class. This is a barrier. And I can share some personal experience where I thought a similar thing would be a really great solution, and it wasn't. It did not work real well just to have this very direct feedback with the academic side.
Yeah, and the thing is, and the Dutch are even known to be direct, right? So we
Okay.
in other cultures we are sort of seen as a bit rude because we're so direct. But even for the Dutch, this was a thing, right? So
Okay.
so that didn't fly. But the reason why I started, the reason why I even thought about it, because it's that I just saw like, how could it be possible that you have students that at high school really spend all their efforts to get the best grades to go to the best university because
Yeah.
that's where they're promised, that's where the future is, and then they get there and then they learn how it's been 100 years ago, right? I mean, how could that be? I mean, for me, it felt just like a sort of I'm not sure if I can use that word, but it's sort of betray to these students. Like, come on, we should deliver up to the expectations. So that's the reason why I started. It just couldn't really sort of see how to fix it yet. So we tried that fix, didn't fly. Then we went to the next fix, which was supporting this flipping the classroom model. So with technology, making it easy for teachers to do that. That worked, but it only worked for 1% of the teachers that were willing to completely restructure their pedagogy, right?
Yeah.
And that never scaled, so we weren't able to actually create a business around that. So that's how we iterated towards the proposition that we currently have, and that one is flying. So it took us some time, I guess, to find it out. But what has never changed is why we do what we do.
Okay. So now this has to transition into what is it? Because if anybody's watching, there's like all this buildup of like, okay, whoa, I get it, changing this. And I agree with you from the experience standpoint. I had, so my personal experience with this, I had that moment when I went to grad school. So when I went to grad school, it was where I had all these expectations. This is going to be the apex of whatever. And then I went and I remember going, wait a minute, this is not, like, there's so much missed opportunity here.
Yes, sir.
Not that it was necessarily bad or a slam. It just was, we could be doing more and we're missing it. Like, we're missing opportunity to do this kind of thing. So I had a similar one, and similar to you, similar experience. Hey, well, I'll just share this feedback. And it was not, well, you say
That's
not scalable.
yes. Well, that's for sure. And then I guess that's the underlying core problem. Right? The underlying core problem is that universities used to be that place that relied on their name and not on their actual product,
They
right?
did.
I
Yep.
have to explain leaders of universities in the world where we're currently operating, and these are top universities, what an NPS score is, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
you gotta measure your NPS score of your students. And okay, it's not a one because it's a fancy campus and it's nice and it's a great experience. So they get to that 3, 4, but out of 5. But you should get at least 60 to 70% of the people scoring you a 5 out of 5. And if you don't,
Yes.
then your product isn't good enough. Then you're not viral enough yet. So you should double down on improving that experience. And to me, it's
Yep.
just striking how much money is invested into everything but the core of what university is supposed to be doing, which is that learning experience. That's still so outdated. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
we were
No,
building
but
up. So you're
it's a
right.
really good. Well, the thing is, we're gonna get to see. We got lots of time, although it's gonna go quick. But I think your point is spot on in this. And again, going back to what I said in the beginning, that if you're in corporate, going, well, I'm not. We've experienced a similar journey in the same sense, where a lot of corporate learning organizations modeled after higher education. It was. I won't mention names, but there are lots of corporate universities that were set up similar, where it was about, well, it looks neat and it's really great and we have this reputation type of a thing. And then over the more recent years, people started going, okay, but what am I actually getting out of this? Like, is there something tangible that I can connect to? And when there wasn't anything there, it created some major disruption. And that came I remember I was in the for-profit ed industry for a period of time, and that was a major disruptor in the early 2000s, when suddenly democratized learning experience hit the masses. Now, granted, that industry went through its own thing, but this similar type of thing is saying, what really is the experience? Because it's not about just the brand. So let's get to so what is feedback fruits then, and how is it actually doing that? Because you mentioned flipped classroom as you started there, but it wasn't quite enough. So you've clearly expanded on what that is.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so our value proposition of feedback fruit. So what we do is we have a fruit basket full of different fruits, and every fruit is a yeah. Why not?
I love
Right.
it. I love the stories. I love the stories of like the brand, because you're always like, oh, okay, well, now I understand. Okay, so feedback, you've got a basket of fruit. Keep going with it.
Well, this is a podcast, right? It's Friday afternoon at least here, so we can make some side paths. We get quite some applications of people that work in the fruit industry and that are great at that, and then we have to explain that we're actually an edtech company. But no, so basically we support teachers with improving their learning experiences for students. And how we do
Okay.
that is we have this fruit basket with different types of fruits. For every fruit is a tool with which a teacher can easily implement a teaching method which we know works much more engaging and much more is much more interactive than that traditional learning. So
Okay.
basically, we have this. What we envision for the future is that we move away from the traditional one-size-fits-all lecture, right, to much more
Yep.
diverse type of methods, which are more personalized and depending on the context. So, however, the core problem and these teaching methods are not necessarily new, right? We know about expert groups. The value of expert groups, that's a method. We know about team-based learning as a method. We know about peer feedback as a method. We know already since a long time that these methods are much more successful. However, how are you going? It's not scalable for
How
a
do you
teacher. And
do it?
yeah, that's it, right? How do you do
No,
it with also having a
what's funny
private life?
about that is those things. And when you have these conversations, similar to what you said, a lot of people are like, I agree. I agree that that's an effective thing, or we should be doing more. But to your point, a lot of times it's like, but I don't really know how. So give some more context to that. But if I'm understanding what you're saying is, and I like this, I'm gonna go with this basket of fruit, analogy, because I like that. Right. Essentially, you're offering academics the ability to say, hey, we have this tool set, this basket of fruit that now makes these things that are important and transformative to the learning experience, but we're going to make it easy for you. So instead of going, I know I probably should blow up my entire program and deconstruct, it just feels too overwhelming to do it. And so you're making it easy.
That's exactly it. And that's what technology should be doing. And this is, I guess, also the core. This is how we got here, right? So we spoke with so many innovative teachers that had to give up their private life in order to give a fantastic experience to students. They really gave in. They even at research universities, they even got not promoted on their research because they spent so much care and love and time for that learning experience. And that I have stories which are heartbreaking because of that. The students loved them, but they got fired, right? These type of stories, and to me that was terrible because they are having the same mission as we do. So what we thought is, what if we would just we took them. So it's not us that came up with these teaching methods, right? We worked very close, and we still work day to day, very close with these teachers, and thought about, okay, so how can we help you? How can we design the technology such that you don't have to use these Excel sheets and this program and that program and have to match it, but you can just easily smoothly run it. And the thing is, in education, this is often overlooked, especially for edtech. I mean, for almost any, except for medical technology, I guess, having a 97% success is really good, right? So you have this at 70% success. Wow, you just did a great job. Look. For edtech, that's not the case. If a teacher gives a course to, say, 150 people, and they have a 90-70% success rate, that means that, what is this, 4 or 5 students didn't have a good experience. That teacher will get 5 emails, probably 10 if he doesn't reply quick enough, with students that go mental because there was something that went wrong. So you really have, when you design pedagogical technology, you really have to be careful of all these edge cases that can happen in this big class when you organize such, for example, a peer feedback activity, right? I handed in late because I actually have a good reason to, right? It didn't work in my browser. All these type of things. You have to design such that experience is extremely smooth, because that's when also the colleagues of that teacher that actually is willing to give up their private lives are saying, you know what? I mean, it's great. I see your students really love you. I see you win the Student of the Year award, but I'm never going to do what you're doing because I don't want to. And I understand that, right? I mean, that makes tons of sense. So all of a sudden, if you have to build a technology with which others can also do the same method, but then without the burden, that's basically when you see a real transition
when
happening.
It starts to take off.
Yeah.
No, and it's funny because we didn't get into all this, but I was a teacher originally, and I remember some of the experiences, even being, and I wasn't in higher ed, I was in middle school, but I remember some of these things where the great teachers, it was a ton of work to try and change the classroom experience. And like you said, it was often done in personal time. You were using all these different tools. It was a lot, and a lot of teachers were like, I'd like a better classroom experience, but I'm not willing to do all the different things that you're willing to do to make that happen. And I think your point of trying to say, well, let's make it easy for them is actually what then makes it scale. Because if only one person can do it who's willing to sign up to spend their entire life trying to fix things, it won't move to others.
But yeah, exactly this. But just to highlight this element, these teachers that are willing to put in that effort are heroes, are unrecognized heroes. They are my personal favorites. I so much think they are so undervalued for what they do. They do so much and they're not recognized for that. I think that should change, really should change.
Well, and I think what's amazing about what you did, and I think this is where your point about the work they did was so critical. And I remember having so much respect for even the middle school and high school teachers that were doing this. And in many regards, what you did is they paved the way for you to be able to see, okay, hey, here's what good looks like.
Yes.
Now we just have to figure out, how do we make it easier? Had those people never done it and just been fine with the status quo and said, whatever, it's too much work, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to say, how do we build something that makes it easy and scale?
Spot on. exactly this. And I, we have a belief that when it comes to pedagogy, and it's also the pedagogy that's needed to get learning design to the next level, when we come, we're still in the Stone Age of the understand. Even what we're in the Stone Age of learning design, even what we now call innovative,
Yes.
is still sort of it's like that first website, right? So that first website was a great innovation, but
Yes.
if we will look at it right now with the
If we
latest
looked
we
at
have,
it now, we would be
it's
like, are you
terrible.
kidding?
Yes,
Yes.
and this is how they're going to look at the pedagogy that we're currently at, the team-based learning that I'm now saying, well, it so works so fantastic. That's just how we're going to look back on that. So at Feedback Fruits, we have not just designed this tool basket with the existing fruits in it. We actually designed this whole mechanism, which we continuously search for new fruits or better flavors within an existing fruit in order to continuously drive this transition. So it
Okay.
wasn't only with that teacher that sort of designed the thing, hey, thank you, we're now making it easy and we're never talk again. We are in continuous collaboration with them to keep driving that
Continue
boundary,
improving
right?
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I think that's so that kind of gets back to the core of what you've tried to do with the technology standpoint, which I think is an important point for anybody in any sort of human development capacity, corporate learning,
Yeah.
higher education, K-12. It really doesn't matter, is this point of there is no and I think this is sometimes where people kind of get overwhelmed, is there's not this nice destination that we're
Mm,
trying to shoot to. It's not like,
yeah.
oh, and we've arrived now. We
No,
incorporated peer review and skill review into things and we're done. We can call it good. And I think in some regards, that's kind of what led us to where we were,
yeah,
5, 6 years ago, where we kind of had gotten caught in this trap of it's good enough. And then we realized, no, it's not. It's not.
no,
And it's never going to be good enough. We need to keep
that's it.
pushing the boundaries
That's
of
it.
what we can do. And technology is allowing us to do it in ways that I love your website example. Like even the most advanced things we're doing today, 5 years from now, we're going to look back at that and go, remember when we thought that was
Yes.
super innovative?
Well, exactly this. And that's an interesting example because of more reasons. Because if you sort of dive into this, like, so how did we get to improve websites? Then what stands out is like for the first time we were able to really quickly measure
Yes.
website experience, right? So we got that data, and the data gave us the insights of click rates, bounce rates, time spent on pages, da, 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 and where, and these eye trackers. All of a sudden we got to measure the experience very
Yeah.
well, and because we had that data, we were able to sort of move, improve, continuously improve. That's one. So we had the data. But secondly, we also were able to iterate quickly and then get new
Yes.
data. And that's interesting when it comes to EdTech, because now, for the first time, the same thing is going to be applied to learning experience as well. We can much better measure, and we can much better iterate. And the only unfortunate thing is at EdTech compared to websites. So a website was available to the universe, right? So everyone that was on the internet could go to that website. Your traffic was, some websites had really high traffic. That's a bit different still for pedagogies, right? So learning experiences. So you also have to make sure you can scale these learning activities to a lot of students, such you can get actually data that makes sense. But we are at this stage at a certain scale in where all of a sudden the data starts telling us stuff that we can use to then quickly iterate. And that's how we need to continue moving, I guess. So that's an interesting comparison for a couple of reasons.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I don't know is people aren't always thinking about this in terms of why this technology piece is such an important component to this. I mean, yes, it's about
Yeah,
the experience, and yes, it's about some of these other things, but to your point, it's also about going back to this constantly iterative
yeah,
growth model where you're using the data that you're getting from this technology to inform what other changes you need to make. And again, it goes back to this idea that you're not trying to arrive at a destination. You're trying to say, how are we just continually pushing ourselves to the next level of what we can do? And technology is allowing us to do it so that we're not trying things going, I don't know, I think it works. It seems like it's okay. We can actually look at it and measure and say, well, no, it actually did not work the way we thought, or it did, or now we need to go one step further.
Yeah. And I think that's the opportunity that we have here. And one thing to really keep in mind, though, is that context, pedagogy and learning design is very sensitive to context, which makes it a bit more complex, but it's very context sensitive. Again, a reason why you want to have a lot of data before you can actually say something significant and concrete. Also, an argumentation on why we actually move to much more diverse type of learning activities. But I very much agree. Let's double down on this continuous innovation, and yeah, and in that sense, try to drive pedagogy out of the Stone Age. I guess that's what it is, at least.
So let me, because I think there's two angles, two directions I want to go with this. So we'll see where we go and how much time we have with this. But one of the things that I think I'm going to start here. This is one of the things that I think even in corporate we deal with. And it sounds like, and I just remember from my own personal experience, the challenges that I ran into it. You were trying to, in some ways, go after the sacred calf with academics. It was like, whoa, you're trying to disrupt higher education and the way we do academia. There's a lot of resistance to that. Now, you talked about some of the things that led to that, but I'd love to hear, how have you been able to, or what are some of the things you've had to do to help change the way people think about it? Because in the corporate space, it's a similar thing. I think sometimes people say, yeah, we want to do more workflow learning, or we want to do more, but not only do they not necessarily know how, there's some real resistance to change. And I know in higher ed, there was a lot of, and still is a lot of resistance to change. So how are you seeing, or how are you working to help get through that? Because I think there's a lot of lessons that can be translated across the board.
Well, very good question. So I guess when we talk about higher education, right, it's a strange beast because it's so big. So if we would take an university, right, and then even at the university, there's different stakeholders. So you have these teachers. That's where in the end the change needs to happen. But you also have the university board, right, where it's sort of top down. So first of all, we already operate in this field for relatively quite some time. So we've seen changes happen. We are seeing changes happening. So first of all, it's that at that university board level, universities are starting to realize that they are a sitting duck, right? I think in Silicon Valley, they say there's two industries that haven't been disrupted yet by technology. That's healthcare and that's education. And that is something that I think gets in between the ears. And there's a reason for this, right? Because I think there's three key things that make, if higher education doesn't change, make higher education obsolete. And that is, one is the big thing of degrees over skills. That's changing, right? All of a sudden, people start hiring on skills instead of degrees. Well, that's sort of the business model of university.
Yeah.
That doesn't focus on a fantastic learning experience. So that's one. The second one is competition. As you said, with the private institutions, we've seen it in the US, but now more and more, I mean, skill-specific tribes or academic companies are starting to take off, right? That's competition. And there's a third thing, which is often, I think, overlooked, and that's that attention economy. Like a university model is based on the idea that a student comes to campus, maybe has their drinks at night, but during daytime,
for the most part, their attention is, I'm here to learn.
That's it. And that, of course, changed over time, right? Rapidly the last couple of years. So these three things just really threat the existing model. The good thing is the solution here is learning experience. If you double down on your learning experience, if you make that fantastic, then one, you make sure that students actually get transformational learning experiences, which give them these skills. Two is competition is, well, if you outcompete competition, you're doing a good job. And three, if you have a fantastic learning experience, the other distractions that are there are also taken away. So that's this thing. That is something that directors at the universities are starting to realize more and more, which I think is a good thing. On the other side, so on the bottom side of an institution, if we put that hierarchy in, there you have those professors and teachers. There, we always go with the coalition of the willing. So our strategy is always like people that are very resistant. Well, you know what? Yeah, where our hands are off. Like either you go with pensions, or hopefully you will be inspired at one day. But what we find is what really works in the end is every teacher, even a professor, if they're in front of their class, they care about that experience. They care about it.
Yep.
I mean, I hear them saying year after year after year, the distance between me and these students just becomes bigger, bigger, bigger. This is due to, of course, an attention economy problem, but they experience that. So you really feel that they feel also that urgency. Like, I mean, come on, how can
Yeah.
I, I can't touch them anymore. I can't reach them anymore. That's that experience. So that experience of that problem is growing. Plus, if they see successes by others, that their students, I mean, teachers really, they tell you that. So first, that the distance became bigger and bigger and bigger. Then I applied this method, and my students didn't. They asked questions. The questions weren't, "Is this going to be in the exam?" But they actually asked in-depth questions
Ask
on the
questions.
content
They
that I
actually
left.
were engaged.
They actually were engaged, and that experience is something that all teachers care for, no matter the pay grade, no matter the hierarchy that they have because of their academia. Like, and if you can show that takes off because they do this type of things, that sort of natural organic adoption of these type of methods actually take place. So that is how we do that, by actually just the results, just making sure that you see that engagement happening, and then you get them, even the more conservative teachers, to become interested. Yeah.
You know, what's funny though on this, and I think this goes back to, I said in the beginning, there's a lot of parallels between this, and higher ed is not that different from corporate, because even talking about the top half of this, as you you referred to this disruption is exactly what's happening on the corporate side, in that the focus on business right now is employee skills. It's about the skills, not necessarily did they go to leadership programs, did they get these nice certificates from this, did they complete enough things in the learning management systems. The pressure and the expectation is rapidly accelerating, saying, yeah, but what can they really do? What can they actually do? And that's the same thing that's hitting academia, where it's going, that's fine, you graduated with a degree, but what can these students actually accomplish coming out with that degree? And so that's a very similar parallel that's causing and driving a lot of this disruption behind the scenes. So I don't think that that's unique to higher education in any way, shape, or form.
I hear you, and this is, I guess, where this is. So this is, if I look a bit to the future, I think what we start more and more realizing is that we might not even are going to hire on these skills, but we might are going to hire on the growth mindset of people.
Yes.
Right. That I already see in this company. Like, okay, I see you don't have those skills yet, but I do see you have that growth mindset and that hunger, and it just, this role fits your what you like doing, so it doesn't feel like work. Okay, I'll hire you, and I'll make sure you get these skills.
Yes, you have the learning agility. I've been able to assess you have the learning agility to be able to pick up the skills that you need to be able to do the job, which again is very disruptive to corporate learning and higher ed, but in both states, because if you're operating off a legacy approach, that is very much a threat, which ties to the point that you brought up about, on the academics of the professor side, L&D is going through a very similar thing where our identity is it can be perceived that our identity is being threatened. I think of the example you gave of professors where they feel their students being more distant, they're disconnected, they want, more flexibility in what they do. And that can be perceived as, well, then what's the value that I bring? Because my value has always been this. And really, it's not that the value's not there. You're just going to have to demonstrate that value in a different way. But people still want what they wanted before. They're just realizing that the way it was in the past doesn't really fit with the way things work anymore. But I think getting that mindset shift, and your point of showing some examples of people doing it right, helps people recognize, hey, this isn't a threat to your identity. What you do is not useless in the next day and age. It's just you're going to have to adapt.
That's it. And just to give an example, very concrete example on this, where I experienced myself real life. It was this teacher that was really, he was the hero. He was known for that, the jokes in academia to to how do you get 200 people asleep, right, in 10 minutes. Then we said, well, put him in front of the class, right? And that was really true. I mean, when he started talking, everyone, up until there was one student that asked a question on the research that that teacher did. And then, boom, tone of voice changed, energy changed. This professor was going to tell what he was doing and how he was doing it. Everyone was waking up. Everyone was like, oh, wait a minute, this whole thing changes. So what happens, exactly as you're just saying, everyone has his talent, but you have to design also that learning experience such that the talent of a specific instructor gets the full attention, right? And the rest you try to automate or order in a different way. And in that sense, it's exactly as you said. Like, but that's with every change, right? Every change people first see as a threat until they start realizing, oh, wait a minute, this is my new role in the change. Yeah. So, but I very much
this will tie. No, well, and again, I think a lot of times we don't realize how much our identity is wrapped up in the activities that we do, instead of really understanding beneath that what's underneath that. Because I remember working with a team of facilitators who, as we moved into the digital age, thought, well, what's my role? Because I used to be a really great trainer and now we aren't doing classroom stuff anymore. And it was, well, but standing there and talking at people isn't actually what your gift was. Like, that wasn't your purpose. Your purpose was you were fantastic at getting people to think critically and facilitating discussion and all that. And that's when you lit up. You didn't light up when you were standing talking through the PowerPoint slide. But a lot of times people don't recognize that they haven't differentiated those two to really figure out what is it that brings out the best in what I'm doing. Yeah, so this leads me to ask this question. When you look at it, so because this may be something that learning and development professionals, even on the corporate side, could say, hey, this is actually a really applicable thing, because there are a lot of companies who still are, COVID hit and they had to blow up some of their stuff and go, oh goodness, we used to do it this way, now we have to offer it in Zoom. And there's a perception that, well, see, it's not really working because, and I look at it and go, oh, well, that's because you kind of took what you were doing and you tried to make it work, and it doesn't really work. So I'm curious, as you work with higher ed, that's a very similar thing where you had a classroom, you had a group of students, you were going through this thing. Now suddenly you're doing it differently. How do you work with professors, or where do they start with this? Because I think there's a lot of parallels to say, how do you actually start to deconstruct the experience and use some of these concepts that aren't new, peer review, skill review, feedback, interactive video, that's stuff it's not a brand new concept, but how do you actually work with folks to actually deconstruct the experience and then rebuild it in a new way?
Yeah, very good question. So first of all, I guess when it comes to that, the COVID experience, right? To me, that my answer is always like, so sometimes you get these people, well, blended learning doesn't work because I tried it through Zoom and it didn't work, right? So I said, well, wait a minute. That's a system that was already broken that just became more painful because you put it online. Let's face it, right? That's not what real blended learning is. Okay. That's what you get. But then is it, how do you get this transition going, right? And I think that is something that we over time understood we have to become really good at. And the how we did that is basically I refer to that first experience of trying to introduce flipping the classroom. That step was too big. Everyone knows, like, okay, that is fantastic. However, everyone feels like, okay, that's.
It sounds really easy. Like, you see people talk about it, like, oh yeah, just flip the classroom.
Yeah,
you're like,
Well,
it's a lot more than you realize.
That's it. So that step is too big. So I guess how we are approaching it, especially because we are not people that boss that can say like, okay, this is how we're going to do it from now on, is we try to do it through intrinsic motivation. And how do you trigger intrinsic motivation is through showing that engagement. So what we do is we say, okay, where are you now? What is your current design? How does it look? And then we check, okay, so you use video, so you have sort of knowledge transfer. Okay, how does that knowledge transfer happen? Well, through video or through documents. Okay, fantastic. Then let's take that first step. So these interactive video, interactive documents, or comprehension, which helps students to grasp the topic, it's relatively easy, but it's a first step, right? It's a first step on a journey, a step-by-step journey to get towards a much more complicated and better learning design But the reason why people take that first step is because they think, it's easy, right? So it's easy. Let's just do it. There's not that many work. We'll try it. And then it's really important that it works, that they see these questions popping up, that they see a form of engagement coming, and they get the feeling like, hey, wait a minute, wasn't a lot of work. It did have some effect. Well, now what's the next step? So you have to again get people in the growth mindset, but now you have to get the teachers into the growth mindset. And you do that by step by step by step by step, and showing that it works. And then that whole fear that you just mentioned of, wait a minute, my whole role changes if I do flipping the classroom, that's too big of a step. That's sort of, yeah, it's a more evolutionary process. And I do think at least higher education, that's how higher education is going to change, through that evolutionary step by step by step process, and not a revolution. But just, and this is one thing that I wanted to say, like, because we're talking, a lot of people that are in corporate learning are currently listening to this podcast, or might do in a recording. I do think for us, like Feedback Fruits, we want to be doubling down on learning experiences, and that is relevant everywhere where learning it takes place.
Yes.
But we do choose for now to focus ourselves on higher education. And why? That is because higher education, or within the beast that's called higher education, you find these professors that are the furthest, when the farthest out. So when it comes to pedagogy. So we do see, even at corporate learning, when I look at the models, I'm not necessarily very impressed, sorry, with all respect, compared to, I think, where we want to go, right, in Mars.
I agree.
And within higher ed, you see, but you have to look very careful, but you see these individual teachers, these individual people that already for years down the line tried and improved with terrible technology. So it doesn't really, it's not scalable yet. However, they did experiment continuously with new pedagogies. And these are the ones that at least show the next steps for us, and even I think for so let's not just in Dutch we say throw away the child with the bathwater, right? So let's not just say, okay,
baby
higher
with the bathwater.
Nope. Yeah, no baby with the bathwater. That's the same thing.
You know, and the thing is this is where I've been in discussions and heard the discussions around, like, is higher ed dead? And I'm like, no, it's not. Is what we thought it was, or the way it's executed, need to change or risk going the way of the dinosaurs? Yes, but that doesn't mean it doesn't serve a distinct value. And I think one of the things, couple of the things that you hit on that are extremely valuable for folks in corporate to think about as well is, when you talked about where do you start with this stuff. You know, I over the years have been involved in so many different organizations and learning programs, and it's amazing to me how often people are just doing things because that's just what they've done, right? This is just the way we've done it. And the thing you hit on, which to me is a first step for everyone in learning, is when you're looking at these transformations, taking the time to break it down and saying, what were we hoping to accomplish with this component? Instead of just looking at the experience as this one thing, like you said, Kate, this knowledge transfer piece, it's important. What were we doing to do that? And a lot of times the thought into that isn't always there. And it just kind of, well, we just do it, versus saying, okay, this is a knowledge transfer component that's relevant, but let's break that apart from this other activity or this other thing that really was designed to do something different. It was designed to do something different. So let's put it in this different category. And by doing that, you actually are able to break down the experience into the distinct components. And then you can decide, where do we want to make changes or transformations without feeling like, oh my goodness, I've got to blow up the whole thing. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you can say, we now have 8 components. What if we just change this one for now? That doesn't feel as scary and overwhelming, but it's a step forward in changing the experience.
That's our strategy, and it pays off. And I think one element to just reflect upon extra to that is an argument for me why this strategy is the right strategy. one step back. So I graduated from an engineering school and I got offered a PhD position in physics. And I told that physics professor, no, I'm going to go to education. he started laughing like, what's this? Come on, what has education ever taught us? And he started to tell all these insights on physics, like what physics science has brought forward. And I didn't say that at that moment in time because I didn't realize it yet, but I should have answered him, you know why this is? Do you know why we have so many laws of physics and we don't have any laws of learning that are scientifically sound? That's because learning is so much more complex than physics,
Yeah.
with all respect, because has so much more variables and it's so much harder to run these experiments that you need in order to find out these laws of learning. And that's much easier at physics, relatively. So we also have to start understanding that although learning is often regarded as, okay, well, at HR, oh yeah, they also do learning. Yeah, okay, well, that's the first budget that gets cut if there's a big disruption going on. That's because how we perceive it at this stage. But that perception is completely wrong. It's one of the hardest sciences that's out there, and it's really hard to understand how you have to do it better. But it's extremely important. And I think in the path of going out of the Stone Age to Mars, when it comes to pedagogy and learning design, we will discover these laws of learning, just like we have discovered laws of physics. However, it's just going to take some time and perception. So let's change the idea that learning is something that we just also have to do because it sort of comes natural as humans, and we do this, right? So everyone has an opinion about it and everyone feels they're an expert in it. But we have to be so careful and we have to really measure and double down on this and step by step take that approach. At least that's our strategy, and I think that's an argument of why this strategy works.
So I am in complete alignment with you on this, in the sense that, to me, and I think it's one of the reasons that I ended up staying in learning, because I went into software engineering, and the complexity of that to me very quickly I thought it was boring. It's so predictable. I can figure this out, and it doesn't change. There's nothing really that unique. And you start looking at people and you go, holy crap, this is extremely complicated, because like you said, there's not super easy ways to just figure it out, because there's so many variables, there's so many nuances, personal experience, lived experience add into this stuff. The psychology of each individual is completely different. You start adding all that together, and trying to solve a people problem is ridiculously complicated. And I think we don't give it the credit that it's due.
Yes.
That when we say, hey, no, this is hard work, and we have to work to change this perception that, oh yeah, it's just easy. We just need to teach people something. Just do it. And it's no.
Exactly this. And just to sort of continue on this line of thought, you asked me what's the reason why you started Feedback Foot, right? Well, because that learning experience was so bad. But why do I care about that learning experience at universities? Why didn't we yet sort of pivoted higher ed? Because there are dinosaurs anyway, we're going to disrupt it. Because I believe that for our democratic societies to flourish, we require a significant improvement of our understanding on how humans work in order to be able to deal with the power that the insights in physics has given us. Because these insights in physics have given us as humanity tremendous power, but the wisdom in order to control that power as humans and as to be able to live in a big society, right? Not just a group of 30, but which we're naturally sort of scaled towards to. We also need to learn that. And for that, we have to, for wisdom to exponentially grow, we have to double down on our understanding of human beings. And higher education, at least, I don't think they do a good job at it, but at least they have the task to also equip people with these skills. And although it's still very under-invested in, under-understood, it is significantly important, I think, for the survival of humanity on this planet, to be honest. And that's, for me, the reason why I'm in education. I'm trying to solve these problems. And why I also try to encourage everyone to really grow their appreciation for these problems. Because if the bright minds of the world are not going to optimize for that extra minute of screen time on YouTube or whenever any other platform because there's money to be made there, but actually on the things that are
The
vital
matter.
to survival of humanity, then I think we're doing the right thing. Yeah, sorry to be so dramatic, but to
No,
me,
but
this.
it's I don't think we thought the conversation was going to go this way, but I think I'm really glad that it did, because your point about this is cannot be understated in the sense that, and I think what we learned, probably, if I were to reflect back on the last 18 months, I think the last 18 months showed us just how little we actually know about people and the way they work. We thought we did, and I think this is what led to us getting a little bit comfortable and complacent in human development. And this is, we thought, oh yeah, we know enough, like we're pretty good in terms of what we know. And then suddenly COVID hit and this blew up, and everything we thought we knew just got annihilated in many regards. And it's pushed us to say, we don't actually know that much. And I think what we have to battle right now, and this is the thing that I think is encouraging, and I hope this conversation encourages and inspires other people, is that's not bad. And I think sometimes that's where the identity piece comes in, is we feel like, well, this is a threat because I thought we knew things. And now you're telling me that maybe I didn't have all the answers. That means that I somehow failed. And it's like, no, but that should inspire you to push harder and push further forward, because we have barely scratched the surface in terms of what we can do in terms of tapping into human potential.
That's it. And that's what I love. I mean, I'm a European, right? But that's what I love about the US is that mentality. Like, okay, let's look at it as if it's an opportunity, right? Because it is a tremendous opportunity. Because if we find it out and if we do it right, can you imagine how much better the world will look, right? And I think that that is exactly the attitude. Yeah, big fan of it. And I think that that is just to sort of circle back on this, right? So this is basically again the growth mindset, right? So it's a growth mindset
Yes.
of trying to fix problems and being okay with some with not knowing how to fix it, with knowing that you probably don't have the skills yet to fix it, right? But at least be comfortable there to go from there to better learning. And when I'm talking about the sort of this transition in higher education, one of the significant things that I always challenge higher education on is how they do assessment. Because
Okay.
the way that assessment is done, the way that we are basically have been assessed as students when we went to even high school or university, is breaking down the growth mindset. It's continuously, oh, so on this scale you are a 6 or an A or a B or a C, and and you work up until that one moment, and you get very stressed in order to sort of, oh, you know what, how much am I worth? And okay, I'm a low, I'm not worth that much. I mean, what does that do with people in that age? It's terrible, because everyone has talents, everyone has potential, maybe not at certain things, or at least I see it as muscles. I really think that in our society and the way that education is structured, it's too much structured on the thought and the belief that um, skills and everything and talent is hardwired. It's
Yeah, it's a
muscles.
fixed, it goes back to
It's
fixed
muscles.
growth. It's a
That's
fixed
it.
potential. Like, we're just
That's it.
trying to assess what your fixed potential is. And it's like,
That's it.
that doesn't exist.
Exactly this. Everyone has a brain, just like everyone has muscles. I always like to look at that comparison with. I mean, if someone's strong, right? Someone's fit, and you have me, so that's the difference. Then, then if I take something, I say, well, it's heavy. This thing is heavy, and this other person says, well, no, I think it's light. It doesn't mean that I never can become strong. It's just that I trained less than that other person. So, but the way that education is assessed is you're weak and that person
You're
is
strong.
strong. No, that doesn't work because it gives me that fixed mindset because it tells me I'm weak and it tells me I can't do this, and it starts sort of demotivating me to actually even try. Well, if we would assess on the difference, right? So I trained a bit and I was able to do a bit more. Well, that's a celebration. We should celebrate that. And this is on
Yep.
physical strength, but the same goes with skills. And of course, some skills fit better than others. I mean, I won't say that there's a difference between people, but I think the difference is over exaggerated. It's actually closer
Yes.
together than at least the educational system pretends it to be. And I think that is a really hard thing, because this is what basically breaks the growth mindset, and we need that growth mindset everywhere.
Well, and I think this is, man, we could have done a full episode just on this part if we wanted to, because this whole that to me is one of the most exciting parts about skills. And I think your point about the historical context of assessment is really important for people to consider in this, because you can overlook the fact that you may actually be creating fixed mindsets in your organization or in your institution through your assessment methods and not even realize you're doing it. So you may have this vision of, well, I want everyone to have a growth mindset, yet you're institutionally set up to tell everyone, well, but this is the box that you have to fit in based on how I'm assessing you. And I think that's the transformation that's happening in corporate right now, is saying we've put people in a box based on their job experience or their whatever this is, instead of saying, but at the core, what are the skills and capabilities that they have? And then let's reevaluate where they may be able to exercise that. And to your point, can people grow skills in areas that maybe they don't have them? Yes, but they may also say, but it's not worth it for me. I wrote a blog article saying, I once tried to lose a bunch of weight and get skinny. It doesn't work for me. I can do it, but the amount of effort I have to put into it is ridiculous. Now I can lift weights and I can put on bulk much easier. So for me, it's like, well, I could go this pathway, but I would much prefer to go this pathway because it's what works. And I think that's where we can get with skills, is to say, there is no box that you're boxed into. There are areas you may say, I can build my skills and I can accelerate them in a much different way and better and more efficiently for me over here. Well, then let us help you unlock that potential. But I love your point about not boxing people in. And I think we do it way too often.
I'm so much with you. And again, to look at it as an opportunity. So the opportunity here, and especially for workforce, I mean, I run a company myself. The opportunity here is that what we do in our company is we ask people every week how much days of the week felt like work. And we try to reduce that thing to 0 with everyone. Well,
I love
unfortunately, that. we don't always do that, but at least it's sort of this mission, right? In order to do that. And what does that mean? It means that people are performing. If you do something that you like doing, you're often good at it, and it doesn't feel like work, right?
Yep.
And that is, I guess, the thing that you would want to do and that you want to find out. And when it comes back to assessment, I think that the opportunity here, if we try to get away from that traditional way of assessing, I think it's a concept called programmatic assessment. So programmatic assessment is something that I very much believe in, because it's actually facilitating this growth mindset.
Yes.
And it doesn't judge you on where you are today, but it judges you on, well, it tries to push you, and it doesn't judge you. That's the whole idea. So it's not assessment of learning, but assessment for learning. So it tries to help you to say, hey, maybe here, maybe here, maybe here, maybe lift this thing a bit more with your left hand, like these type of tips in order to train your muscles. But then your any skills. And so this programmatic assessment, just to I have at least one more tip to the community, is something that I think is going to be huge.
And it's, to your point, for humanity, this is like, I think sometimes we downplay this as not that big of a thing. This is huge. Yes. I mean, this is huge with where all of humanity is going with this. Yes. And I think this is one of the things that's so exciting about what technology can do, because we can start to help people understand this. Now, the first thing, and this is one of the things you hit on, is the fact we got to flip the script in terms of how we look at assessment. Because if we're looking at it the wrong way, then it's not going to have this impact. But if we look at this, like you said, as, hey, this is a progressive or programmatic assessment designed to help you know where you need to strengthen or where you need to grow to get you to where you want to go. Yeah. That's a fundamentally different approach. And I think some of the things that you're doing in higher education are a great way to start that transformation. And all the things we talked about, they're not limited to higher education, which is why I think it's so valuable that we hit on this stuff, regardless of where you are. If you're in the space of human development in any capacity, these things all overlap, just maybe looks a little bit different.
What I always say, just to make that point, is your hat doesn't change, right? If you go from K-12 to university, it's not that you say, okay, well, there, I take on my new hat, and I can now go to corporate. I take on my new hat. No, the brain is still the same. So the way that you learn is the same. The context is different. I agree. However, there's so much more overlap than there's difference.
Okay. Well, I told you, Woody, that we would run out of time, and we have officially done that. So there's like 2 other areas I want to go into, but we'll have to save that for another conversation. So thank you so much for being here. Again, hopefully folks who were listening, this will get you to think a little bit differently about potential and assessment and what we can do, and that the complexity of what we do, yes, it's overwhelming, but it is important work and has tremendous implications on humanity as a whole, not simply workforce performance or higher education outcomes. This is a much bigger thing that we're playing with. So thank you for making the time. I will let you get to your Halloween party so that you can enjoy.
You don't want to know.
I know they're all sitting there going like, get on with it already. Wrap it up. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for listening, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.